You know, Ellis, sometimes I wonder if this whole Weird West life is even worth living.
Oh, it ain't so bad, Jeb. At least you still got your original skin. That's a privilege.
Yeah, well, I ain't real keen on losing it either. Every day it's something new. Werewolves, wasps the size of hawks, devils turning cattle inside out. Last week I saw a tumbleweed staring at me.
Could have been one of them real existential tumbleweeds. You know, the kind that contemplates the meaning of drifting before it rolls away.
Ellis, I don't like that that's a thing that exists.
Could be worse. I got a cousin who turned into a sentient pool of horse shit. Can't play cards with him no more. He cheats now.
Huckleberry is a Weird West RPG written by Stephen Alexander and illustrated by George Sellis. In this video, I want to share with you a few reasons why this is actually a pretty special Weird West RPG in a genre that I think is fairly crowded at this point. Then I'll give you the takeaways I have after having played this game myself. At the time that this video is released, there should be a free quick start for you to download so that you can take a spin yourself. And I also did a written interview with the creator, Stephen Alexander, where I directed all my questions about his design choices. As always, with these interviews on my newsletter, there are some really interesting insights into how good RPGs are made. I'll leave links for the quick start and the interview below. But for now, let's get into the reasons why Huckleberry is a best-in-class Weird West RPG. It's not hundreds of pages. The full game at the time of this recording is 89 pages, but I do think it will expand with a GM section and more artwork. But the key here is that it's not hundreds and hundreds of pages, or in one legendary Weird West RPG case, over 900 pages. Instead, what you're getting here is a tightly written and edited, cleanly designed Weird West game that you can read in about one sitting. There's a hint of lore and setting background, but it's mostly up to you and your players to fill in the details. It's weird as hell. The playable characters run the gamut from damned, devil child, fey child, robotic constructs called ironclad, vampires, psychics, witches, pyrokinetics, shamans, and skin changers. All this Weird West stuff is really a state of mind, but once you've dipped a toe into it, everything does start to make sense a bit. Weird West tries to fuse classic Western settings with supernatural, horror, and fantasy elements. And I think this game pulls it off in spades. The dice mechanics make you think. Your character is composed of essentially 3 components, and all of them are defined by step dice. You have your 4 core attributes, which you do not level up throughout the course of a campaign. Then you have your 9 skills, which you can spend 2 downtimes to level up once per each skill in the course of a character's arc. And finally, you have your weird die, which is used on reaction rolls here and there. The weird die goes up and down a lot during the course of play. Anytime you want to make a skill check, you combine one attribute's die with one skill die and roll them both. The goal is to meet or exceed a 10. What's interesting here is the dozens of combinations that each represent different ways of approaching a problem. As for the weird die, you will roll that with an attribute die for so-called saves, or reactions in the fiction. There's not much thinking here, but generally, you don't want your weird die sinking too low in the course of play. Aces are a deeply integrated metacurrency. There's one other major component of the mechanics, and that's aces. You get these from rolling over the target number, and you spend them on all kinds of things. Aces are used constantly, and you're constantly generating more. They have the net effect of making just about every skill check dynamic, and something you really have to think about. You can get really good with your weapon. If you spend precious downtime on studying your weapon of choice, you can pick up a legend trait that amps you up considerably in a fight. Your big irons are any weapon you want. Even though your main weapons are called big irons, they're basically anything from brass knuckles to a sword cane to a tomahawk, musket, war club, or whatever makes sense in 19th century Wild West. But you can also modify your mains with 28 different upgrades that can give you a mechanical advantage. According to the rules, you can have up to 2 regular sized or 1 bulky big iron on your person. And instead of tracking ammo by the bullet, you just mark off an ammo slot for each successful attack and then take a reload action to refill the slots. Since this game doesn't want you worrying about ammo too much, you actually have infinite ammo on your person. You've got a quantum kit. Kits in this game refer to any kind of specialized equipment, and a character can have pretty much as many kits as their wealth level allows. To use a kit, The player involves a flashback that explains how they remembered to pack it in the first place, and voila, they have the kit in the present moment. Unless you're ambushed, a player goes first. The PCs in this game, who are called Mavericks, tend to go first when combat starts. Well, one Maverick will go first, then a hostile, then the next Maverick, and so on until everyone has gone. Action economy is dead simple. At default, you get 2 actions per turn, a simple action and a complex action. Simple actions are things like aim, assist, draw your weapon, move. A complex action is something like attack, reload, or patch up an ailment. If you think of another thing you want to do on your turn that's not listed, the GM is advised to be liberal about it and try to let you do it. Now, to be fair, you can buy more actions during your turn by spending your aces, which can definitely make things more interesting. Ailments and injuries instead of hit points. When you take damage, it comes in the form of an ailment that is rated as a step die. If you have an ailment at the beginning of a turn of combat, you roll that die. If the result is a 1, 2, or 3, then you get to ignore the ailment for that round. If you roll a 4 or higher, then you suffer the ailment. So for example, if your leg catches fire during a fight, you would take on the branded ailment with a D6 rating. Then when it's your turn, you roll a D6. If you get higher than a 3, then in the case of branded, you take a minor injury. If and when all your minor injury slots fill up, you start taking on the next level of injury until you fill all of them up and enter the dying state. Make a deal with the devil to avoid death. There are times where you don't have to accept death for your character. Instead, you can strike up a deal with the GM to create a deal with the devil. If a bargain is struck, you gain a scar but clear all injuries. Now, paying back your debt is another issue entirely. It's all bounties and mysteries. Keeping it simple here, you're always a so-called maverick, either doing bounties or investigating leads on the Wyrd, the mysterious force that has corrupted all of nature. This sort of focuses gameplay and expectations, so you can really just jump in and start playing or running the game without having to do too much thinking. There's a whole poker game. One of the pastimes that you can engage in during the downtime between bounties is a whole unique set of poker rules. It's a good way to simulate the Western theme, and a great way to earn some extra chips that you can spend on upgrading your weapons. Enemies are unpredictable. Due to the fact that the GM draws a card and can produce any of 4 distinct combat behaviors for each of the enemies, you're going to get some surprising variation in an encounter. Alright, so here are the takeaways from my playthrough of the game. Pushing for a ruling is encouraged. I mean, you don't want to be weird about it, but you do want to find attribute and skill combos that might benefit your character in any given situation. This is not entirely easy to grasp when playing the game for the first time, since you have to fundamentally understand the difference between things like expression, which is truthful communication, and skullduggery, which is deceit. But once you understand the outer bounds of these characteristics, you really should be pushing for the best combos for your character. Ace management is everything. I was surprised at how intimately tied the meta currency of aces is to the dice mechanics, especially in combat. You really don't want to be afraid to spend those aces frequently, since they are how you get extra actions, stave off injuries, and increase damage, among other things. Overspending aces is also a thing. You do want to preserve maybe 1 or 2 for your next round sometimes. There's an unspoken bit of strategy that you'll learn pretty quickly in combat when it comes to aces, but it can turn the tide of a battle if you figure it out. You grow wide, not tall. Leveling up in the game is slow, where it requires 2 dedicated downtimes to increase a skill by 1 die, and you can only increase any skill only once. And it takes even more to gain a second disposition or change your dispositions. In the end, you don't really get that much more powerful, but I guess you could become a little more complex with a store of different modified weapons. There are 3 modes in the game. You've got an investigation phase, which normally takes up about half a session, and then a combat phase where all accounts are settled. Then if there's time left over, or if you want to dedicate part of the next session to it, you have a downtime phase where you can engage in different pastimes and can flesh it out with some ad hoc role-playing. If you're looking for something else in your Wyrd West game, I reckon you won't find it here. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Huckleberry so far. Like I mentioned at the top, There should be a free quick start for you to download, which will give you a clear idea of the mechanics and the look and feel of the game. And there's the interesting written interview that I had with creator Steven Alexander. Also, links for my Patreon are down below. Make sure to leave a comment about what you think of Huckleberry and of Weird West RPGs in general. Thanks for watching. I'll see ya.
Reckon that's our cue to skedaddle, Ellis. Anyway, them tumbleweeds outside been eyeing me funny.
I'd take tumbleweeds over that three-headed buzzard out there we saw earlier.
3 heads means 3 times the trouble. Let's hightail it out of here. You got the bill this time, Stinky.
Thanks for dropping by, folks. And remember, anything can happen out there, so keep one eye on the horizon.
And keep your other eye on those damn 3-headed buzzards.